Hi, this is Lawrence from the Performance Ranch, and today we're going to talk about ankle mobility, what it is, why we need it, how we lose it, and best ways to fix it. So, starting with what it is. So it's the ability to get into proper dorsiflexion, which is going to be pulling that toe up and in, and also proper, I'll show that again, proper dorsiflexion up and in, and then proper plantar flexion, which is going to be pointing that toe. So a lot of times as we sit down throughout our daily lives, right, that's most of our life right now, as we get older, we tend to end up in a chair a little bit more. Therefore, we don't move through the ankles as much as we really need to. Same goes for how we lose it. That's probably the main reason, is just our sedentary lifestyle leads to that. And then we try to be active by either running, cycling, going to the gym, squatting, lunging, those types of things. But the fact is, we just don't get it properly moving as it should. So then we tend to compensate a lot throughout those movements. I just know myself as a cyclist and as a runner in the past, my ankles tend to always be very stiff. Also with injuries, past injuries, I've had injuries going back all the way. My major ankle sprain I had occurred in 1996. So for some of you, that's before you were born. But the fact is, I was playing high school football. I went all the way upside down, landed, came back down, landed on my foot, and really sprained it pretty bad. It actually didn't break, but I had a lot of damage in there. I ended up missing about 6 weeks of games after that. But after that, that was my main thing, is I kept reoccurring injuries over and over and over again. And it finally took till I became a trainer back in 2003 that I figured out why I kept getting sprains, because I was never doing any work on it. I was never doing any stability work on it, any motion work on it, flexibility and that whatnot. And fast forward going to about 3 years ago now, that's where I kind of really discovered, meeting with the doctors over at Elite OSM, Dr. Shar, Alicia, and Dr. Kathleen. It was really, really good. They helped me out significantly there in that motion. So they really taught me how to get into this range of motion. So we're gonna go through that today. Cycling, for instance, I'm using a pretty stiff shoe. This is carbon fiber sole, doesn't really bend, actually doesn't bend at all. My ankles, ideally, I'm clipped into my pedal, so I'm pretty much staying in this pattern the whole time. So my ankle doesn't get the proper range of motion that it should, because if I was doing this, I'm actually losing power to the pedals. So I've taught myself how to stay in a nice smooth position and pedal in circles while on the bike. Again, great for the bike, but as for daily life goes, not so great. Same goes for shoes. So these are more of a zero drop shoe, meaning it's the same drop from here to here. I used to use a little elevated drop shoe, meaning I had a higher heel, sometimes a difference up to 13 millimeters. So that's 3/4 of an inch, which is a significant amount. And then for those of you who are wearing even higher shoes, whether it's work shoes, dress shoes, high heels, you end up taking that ankle into a position that now we're always here, and we never get that proper range of motion on the Achilles itself. So that's another big issue, is not only is the joint get stiff, but then the muscles surrounding that joint also get stiff. So we're gonna show you ways to break all that tissue up, so then we can get into the proper range of motion on the ankle itself. All right, so first thing we're gonna start off with is making sure knowing where you're starting from. So measuring ankle mobility is super easy to do. We do it when we bring a new client in. We use the FMS screen, and part of the new screen now, there's actually a new protocol for it, but it does include ankle mobility because it's such an important piece of things that we need to do well. So first thing we're gonna do, I'm just gonna put my foot all the way up against this board here. Again, you don't have to have a kit. You can use a board, you can use a wall even. Just put it into a spot, but make sure you can mark where your toe is. So my toe we're gonna be at this 0 mark here. And I'm gonna put my other foot right in front of it. And again, same thing, the outside edge, my whole foot's gonna touch this board. And I'm gonna use this for balance. This is not a balance test. All I'm trying to do is figure out how far my knee can go over my malleoli, which is this bony process. Everybody has this. If you reach down to your ankle and you feel this bump, that's the landmark we're using. So I'm gonna put this dowel right at that landmark, and I'm gonna drive, if I can stay balanced, I'm gonna drive forward and see how close I can get. As you notice, I don't get that close at all. So in our test, that would actually be a red light. We're not gonna go beyond this until we can figure out what's happening there. And like I told you, I've suffered from ankle issues a lot. I purposely didn't do my ankle mobility today. I have to do it pretty much every morning because I wanted to film this and show you typically where I start from. So you saw that. I'm gonna go into this other one now. Same exact thing, heel toe, you can kind of see from this side. I'm marking, actually I'll just go here. So I'm gonna mark it here, and you're gonna be able to see, again, how far, I'm gonna mark this spot with this dowel, how close I get. And there it is, I don't get that close. I'm inches away right now. So, starting point, now we're gonna get into some actual mobility of the ankle. We need to start with foam rolling, and we're gonna foam roll tight tissue in the calves, tight tissue in the ankles itself, around the retinaculum, which is the front of the ankle. It's kind of like a band of fascia. Doesn't stretch or anything, but it supports the tissues in there. So I like to go with just using the vibrating roller to start with. One, it desensitizes the pain, and I'm gonna start right in the ankles itself, right on the calves. And I'm just trying to search out those spots, and I'm not having to even lift myself up. I'm staying on the ground, pushing heavy down with my top leg. But a big thing you have to do is relax that foot. There's so many times I get clients when they first get on this and they'll lock their leg out and they're not really gonna get anything because they're stiffing up that muscle. We wanna relax, and we're gonna use breathing to help relax. I'm gonna get up here, and you may be able to see there on the camera, you may see a little knot, how I bounce over it, right there. So as I do this a little bit more, I'm rolling, I'm finding that knot, trying to smash it out. Again, I'm going medial side, so that's inside of that calf, all the way around to that lateral side. And then I'm even gonna get into the outside here in the perennials, right below the knee, but above the ankle itself. It's a band of muscle there. And those tendons that attach down, they actually come around and it'll wrap around your foot. So everything we're trying to affect now links into that foot via the ankle. And the ankle is one of our most important joints that we have in our body, if not the most important. I mean, that people talk about the feet so much, but what is where's the bridge between the foot and the body, right? It's that ankle. So if your ankle is not moving how it properly should, that's where we tend to get into issues, especially with pain. I know I gave this story a little bit ago, but sometimes I'll get hip pain and lower back pain, which luckily I haven't had in quite some time now. But every time I would get that pain, I would start to feel the effects in my ankle. My ankle would start to hurt. It would start throbbing. And I start to kind of narrow it down. Well, it must be my ankle is causing that hip. So I started working on the ankle a lot, ankle mobility. This was about 2 or 3 years ago now. Because I was just tired of the back pain and the hip pain. There was no need for it. It was just a hindrance in things that I do every day. So once I started getting that corrected, my hip pain and back pain started going away. And it's very rare that I feel that pain. Typically, if I'm driving a long time, that pain comes in. I worked on my driving posture as part of it, but just being in that with my foot on the gas and moving off and on, that ankle doesn't move how it should, and therefore the pain would sit in. So I just know if I would adjust and mobilize my ankle from the very start, things start to go away. So anyways, that little story, we did the roller there pretty quick. Turn this off. So now we're gonna get into the retinaculum again, that band of tissue that runs around the front there. So I'm gonna start here, right in the front, and I'm just gonna kind of roll back and forth, side to side, trying to break up that stuff, loosening things up, even putting a little bit of pressure on the heel. Again, I'm pushing down as I do this. Again, this is not my bad ankle. It's still stiff, but not as bad as my right. But I'm gonna get into that right side as well. And this is something that pretty much I have to do because of my ankles and my ankle health. I gotta do almost every day. There was a time where, flashback 25 years ago, the doctors told me, oh, you're just gonna have ankle issues your whole life, and more than likely you'll have arthritis in there by the time you're 30 years old. Well, I wasn't content with that. I wanted to make sure I didn't get that issue, not thinking how I'm thinking now, but still I was like, I think I can improve that throughout my life. So I can say now that my ankles are tremendously better than they've ever been, but there was a point where I could never in my life sit like this, because I remember trying to surf, I couldn't paddle the board. This is one hindrance I had, and the other hindrance I had, I couldn't sit back with my toes tucked under me. It would just be severe pain. So knowing that's kind of my markers, like, okay, does that hurt anymore? Nope. So that's, I'm gonna make sure I'm still on that stuff. So again, we rolled the front side, we rolled perennials, we rolled calves. Now we're gonna get into a little bit more. Okay, so we're gonna do here, we're gonna do a couple of ankle mobility drills, and there's several ways to do it. I prefer, if I'm by myself, I don't have anywhere to anchor this big band, I'm just at home, I use a small band like this. You know, it's still about the same width. It's really about creating the tension though for the front. So what we're gonna try to do, we're gonna put the band basically right where your ankle folds. You can see that crease right there in my sock. I'm gonna try to put it right on that spot. And the goal is to get it pulled back into this angle here, because we're trying to lock down this navicular, which is this bone that's in here. It kind of floats around. We're trying to lock it down, and as we're gonna put ourselves into dorsiflexion, which is this forward position, we're trying to pull that navicular back, okay, as we do this. So we're gonna kind of move back and forth. So a couple ways to do it. One is you can get a big band like this, tuck it under something stiff. I'm not gonna do it full strength because I know this thing will slide. But just imagine we had it where it was locked down. I'll push it back. And I'm gonna get myself a little elevated as well. So I'm gonna get my foot up a little elevated here because I want the angle to kind of pull me back. So I'm gonna use a little weight plate here. I'm gonna stick this around the front side. I'm gonna step forward, and actually it is holding on great. So again, it doesn't need to be very much, but it's right below that little crease. And what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna drive my knee forward by keeping my heel down. So that's the key. That heel has to stay down, and your knee is gonna track over your second and third toe. Right, that's the kind of key there. We'll get another angle of this, but as I push forward, I'm also using my elbow to drive my knee. Right, and I'm holding with the opposite hand, I'm holding my heel in place, and I'm even putting pressure with my thumb. And your hand may not be that big, so do what you can. But I can kind of feel that starting to move around. If you want to add a little more weight, there's another little technique you can use. So adding more weight, just grab a kettlebell of some sort. You can put it on your knee, again, making sure that heel stays down, toes are going over the second and third. Drive that knee forward. Again, I'm using the weight of the kettlebell to help push me forward. And I'm holding each one for about 3 to 5 seconds there. Still working on breathing. I get one more rep. Ideally, you're doing a little bit more than this. I'm only doing 5 for time's sake, but I can already feel that change starting to happen. Woo! There it is. All right, so that's my bad ankle, or the worst of the two. They're still both bad. And then I'm gonna go here now. Same exact thing. One other big cue of this, making sure you keep that arch in place. You don't want that arch to be collapsed over, because then typically it collapses, your knee goes in. So we want to keep that arch in place, driving the knee forward, keeping that heel down. There we go. So it takes a few reps. As I start doing this more, I start getting a stretch now. You start feeling that Achilles stretch, the soleus, because now we're really focusing on the soleus itself. When I first started doing this, I didn't feel that stretch because the ankle was so blocked up, the muscle couldn't get to any length. There we go. So a few reps of that. Now, if you don't have all this fancy stuff at home, or a way to anchor down a band, using a little mini band, almost as good, not as good, but almost as good. I do that, I put it around the ankle, and I'll get my other foot, and even if it's a little step, that's fine. Okay, I want to be pulling down at an angle, and I'll do the same exact thing. Push forward, coming right back. So I can load this a little bit more because I'm actually standing up and I'm able to push forward. So again, different ways of doing that. Same thing here. Anchor down, driving. There we go. All right, so get a handful of reps of that. We talked about already, that navicular, right? That bone that's in there, you can go in there and feel. You feel your two malleoli, your medial and your lateral here, you kind of come forward, you'll feel where that navicular is. It's right in the front here, and that's what gets pretty stiff at times. So I can press into it with my thumb, but what I've come to figure out now is I actually can put
pressure down, just like we did the retinaculum rolling earlier, but I want to actually push down on that navicular itself. So as I'm putting weight into the roller, it's pushing the navicular up, and I'm actually going to grab my heel and go right around it. And I can get that thing sometimes to pop. Boop, and I can feel it. It just really pops right back in place, and it moves nice and clean. And just getting that motion, I'll do that several reps, and as it gets more clean, it gets less painful. There we go, because it will hurt at first. You're like, wow, it's kind of weird, because it feels like something's gonna bust in there. Again, make sure you don't have any hardware going on in there. You haven't had surgery, doctor hasn't told you, hey, that's not some position you should be in. Again, this is something that's worked for myself, and I know it works for a lot of my clients. Now, the next thing after that, after I kind of got mobility going, we're gonna start working on a little bit more mobility. We call this is a technique from FRC, Functional Range Conditioning. We call it CARS. So CARS is just an acronym for Controlled Articular Rotation. So I'm just gonna move around, all right? So I'm gonna basically lock my tibia, this bone, in position. I'm gonna try to work on posture as well. And I'm just gonna really get into big ranges of motion of just the ankle itself. And I'm being very mindful and intentful of how I move this. I'm not just whipping around, I'm going through it nice and slow and controlled. And I'm really using my musculature, because again, we're increasing range of motion, which is a fantastic thing to do, but you also have to increase the strength in that new range of motion, or else you're more susceptible to injury. And that's our big thing we don't want to have, right? Because you're injured, you can't do the stuff that you enjoy doing. So as we do this more and more, get about 5 reps in, and I'm working on my breathing as well, doing the whole time, locking that tibia down, the same exact thing. And as you do this, you may notice clicks and pops. I know I do. It's like snap, crackle, pop, Rice Krispie treats. All right, now I'm going back the other way. Same thing, nice and slow. And again, I'm holding my tibia right at the bone there, so it doesn't move. I'm not trying to move through the tibia, I'm trying to move through the ankle. There we go, because we do get rotation from the tibia as well, if you can see that. So that's the next phase, right? So we're looking at mobility, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. We kind of got some rotational stuff going. Now another fantastic one I do, and I showed this as an example a little earlier, this is my stretch. So I'm getting, not only am I getting this plantar flexion big stretch, I'm getting my toe, big toe stretched out, so I'm working on all this. Your ideal goal is a 90-degree angle at the foot, at the big toe. I can go a little beyond that, which is great, but I'm sitting into both of my heels. I'm feeling the stretch. I don't really get too much right now, but I used to get a really big stretch throughout my foot, into my ankle itself. I've worked this pattern significantly, so I don't get that much. That's one good one. Another great one is to work on plantar flexion, which is in this pattern. So I'll get my toes are up, my heels are together. I'm actually gonna sit back into it, and I'm opening up the front side of my shins here, of my feet. Like I said earlier, this is a position I could never do, especially this was so painful. I'd absolutely be in tears right now, but now I can do it. I can even lean back on it, I can take all my weight off. Again, it just takes work. It's not like you're not gonna jump through that right away. This is gonna take some time. It's been on about 3 years for me of doing consistent work like this that I'm able to do that now. So, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, rotation. We talked about the whole goal of making sure you stay strong in those new ranges there. Cool, so we're moving to our feet now. We're gonna work on just standing up. We're gonna work on rotations of the foot here itself. So all I'm gonna do is stand here. I'm gonna rotate over that big toe, get that ankle to kind of stretch out. So I'm stretching out this whole front side here. Again, most ankle sprains occur like this. So if we take ourselves to a good range of motion and we can actually tolerate that, the likelihood of spraining your ankle is drastically reduced, but as long as you have strength there. Again, you can't just increase mobility without increasing strength. You gotta do both. And I remember the first time I ever did this, it was at the Untitled Academy in Austin, Texas. My good friend John Wolf took me through this, and I was in absolute tears. I couldn't get here. There's no way. Now I can even lean back into it. Most of my weight's on that, which is crazy to even think 3 years ago how that was a no-go for me. So again, got those ankles moving around. I'm getting dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. The next thing we're gonna do is make sure we can keep that strength there. So I need to work on making sure I can get to good dorsiflexion by going into a heel raise here. Okay, just regular calf raises, right? You're sure you get into a machine and probably bang out those calves. You want to get nice big calves. Tell you, my whole life, I've never done calf raises. My calves are pretty well developed because of running, cycling, all the things I do. I'm walking a lot, about 10,000 steps every day. So you don't necessarily need to do calf raises with weight, but just body weight alone and be able to get to full maximal range is ideal. So again, I'm getting about 10 reps there. You can even add a little lift if you wanted to. And driving up, whoops, I can maintain that balance. It's back and forth. Again, I'm putting myself in a lift so I can get a little bit deeper to it. Right, the next thing is heel toe raises. So gotta raise those toes up. And then you can even rock through. We do a drill called ankle rocking where we go to our heels to our toes. Heels, toes. And as I do this, I'm trying to make sure I stay balanced for one, keeping that core tight. And just trying to create that range of motion. So then, the final thing after that, just to make sure you're looking at how it should be, I'm gonna get up on my toes. I'm actually gonna walk on my toes. Just kind of get those calves fired up there. Walk backwards, but I'm trying to work on that pattern of making sure my feet and my toes understand and my ankles understand how they should function. Because when you run, right, you're gonna drive off that toe, push off that, basically like a springboard, you're pushing off this big toe here. We'll do a separate video talking all about big toe health and how to get more range of motion. So the final thing, as far as exercise goes, we just do a little squat. Goblet squat, I take a little kettlebell here. You're gonna notice my feet will turn out naturally because that's what they do. I'm gonna grab this kettlebell underneath my chin here, holding it by the horns. I'm gonna drop down into the squat position. Elbows are inside my knees here, and I'm driving my knees out, so I'm creating some tension through my core. And I'm actually gonna rock back and forth, trying to keep the heel down, but it's not that important because, sometimes you end up here on your toes, you're sitting by a campfire, right? We've talked about this in previous videos. This is what we used to do back in the day. This is 100 years beyond that. For thousands of years, we would sit around the campfire eating just like this. Very rarely do we have chairs. So going back to those primal patterns now of where we used to be, we're always looking at that. And then again, get those loosened up a little bit. I'm just gonna drop down, back and forth a few times, just to work on that ankle. You notice they do splay out, but that's fine. And then another big one I like to do to kind of cap it off is just a little split squat. So loaded that heel, pushing my knee forward, driving forward and up, creating that range of motion in that ankle. Go back to their one now. Getting about 5 reps each side. And we're gonna retest and see what it looks like. So toe at the 0, heel at the front there, driving ahead. I'm gonna keep the weight into my legs here, driving forward again. I'm gonna mark that spot, and there it is. I'm actually pushing beyond that point, which is a green. So what we want? We want green. We want beyond that malleolus there. Same thing on the other side. Okay, this is my bad ankle, so I'm interested to see what this looks like. So here's malleolus. Bam, there it is. Driving all the way through it, heels down. So again, it takes a little bit of work, takes some time. You have to be consistent about it, and you gotta do it every day, because it's something you just can't do one day and all of a sudden it's fixed, because it's gonna take a while. Like I said, it's been 3 years to even get to that point. It took about a solid year of good mobility doing it. But again, knock on wood, I don't get much pain anymore, and I think the big part of it is because I really take care of my ankles. I divide my ankles up. I mean, I know I don't train this way of splitting up body parts or whatever, but if you were gonna do a split up day where you have a chest day and leg day, I would say ankle day is every day, all right? So do that. Subscribe to our channel, like, subscribe, share this please. We want more of your friends knowing how to help themselves, especially if your friends are your riding buddies or running buddies and they can't go with you because they're in pain of some sort, whether it's knee pain, hip pain. It starts at the ankles, work your way up, and we'll keep talking about it more, all right? Thank you for tuning in.